Someone just sent it. Gonzalez just sent it to me, so I'm calling Gates. I'm explaining to him. I don't know what to say, but I'm going to have some other people call him too. But the nature of what, if I'm getting briefing, I'm going to get another one from the FBI tomorrow. This is serious. Cut this out. Yeah, that's I mean, it's potentially illegal. What are you doing? Well, he's putting people in jeopardy, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol, and these people came prepared. It's rogue with everything else.
What's up, guys? Alex Kapitko here, Centered from Reality Podcast. You guys just got to listen to another fairly troubling recording that's been released from the New York Times about the Honorable Kevin McCarthy, right? In this one, he talks about how serious some of the people were that stormed the Capitol, how they were prepared, how they had zip ties. He's mad at people like Matt Gaetz and Mo Brooks for spewing bullshit, basically. And obviously, Kevin McCarthy then went out later on and attacked some of the only people that were speaking out, like Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger. And this guy, Kevin McCarthy, I think is one of the worst. There's two types of people in this big lie, QAnon, January 6th movement or conspiracy or whatever you want to call it. There's the grifters and then there's the grifted. And I think you see through the Kevin McCarthys that the grifters are leading the grifted here because he knows better, but he just can't seem to speak out against it, you know? This guy clearly understands how dangerous Trump is. It's clear that he wanted him gone. I've listened to another recording where he basically says, I'm going to talk to Biden about trying to calm this down. This was a serious day, probably illegal. He understands how bad all this is, but he also likes money and power, and he wants to be Speaker of the House so badly, and it's just showing, you know. And I am afraid of people like that who don't want to govern. They don't want to maybe speak out for the safety and the future of the country. They seem to only care about power. And those are the people I think that can really lead a country or a movement or even an organization right off the rails, right? And I think about other people, which I'll get into later, but there's been a good conversation online about who's worse, those who actually believe this stuff, like believe that January 6th was just a tourist visit, believe the election was stolen, or the people that know it's bullshit but still support it. And I think it's the ones who know better, you know, and Kevin McCarthy, even Mitch McConnell, who doesn't seem to have any moral red lines, these are the people that have just decided to go with it. And, you know, what I see out of this as time has gone on is that they really think that a close relationship with the president is more important than the truth. You know, the desire for money is more important than politics or just all of it. And, you know, obviously power is nothing new in politics. You know, we have Democrats who also are interested in that. We have Republicans that are interested in that. But you know, the Republicans seem to just fall in line no matter what. The Democrats couldn't even agree on Hillary Clinton. They didn't even like it when Bernie, you know, was popular. The Democrats are good at not falling in order behind the leader just because they need to conform to him. But the Republicans are too good at following the leader. And I just feel like democracies go to die when those who know better are just willing to get along with the bad guys. And I won't stick on this much longer, but, you know, people like myself, people on the left, moderates, we've all seen these recordings of Kevin McCarthy, but I wonder if the average Trump supporter even knows these recordings exist. You know, I wonder if Fox News has even mentioned these. I watched a little Tucker Carlson last night. I saw no mention of this, you know. It's still just, the left is trying to groom your children and, you know, they're all just, the election was stolen. They're all focused on identity politics. And, you know, there's always ounces of truth to that. But at the same time, it's like the guy who's probably going to be the next Speaker of the House clearly thinks Trump is a fraud and a snake oil salesman, but he's still endorsing him, and I just wish more Trump supporters or people that maybe sympathize with the Trump movement heard what these politicians are saying. And again, some may not care because, again, McCarthy, as Tucker Carlson did mention, sounds like he's on MSNBC now. So I don't know. I don't know at all. It's kind of depressing, I guess, would be the way I would put it, And just the hypocrisy of it is you have Kevin McCarthy, who is just criticizing Liz Cheney, literally got her ousted from her committee role and her leadership, her House leadership. I mean, the fact that he's saying the same thing behind closed doors and then just attacking her publicly, it's kind of insane to me. And one more thing sticking on the craziness of Republicans is I wanted to just share a few thoughts on J.D. Vance, who I haven't really talked about very much at all, to be completely honest. But I actually really liked his book, Hillbilly Elegy. I thought he had some really good insights just about what's gone wrong with places like Appalachia, what's happened as our working jobs and our factory jobs have all gone overseas. I think he correctly diagnosed some serious problems in the United States. He even correctly said that Trump was a snake oil salesman and would not fix any of the country's problems. But it seems like since 2016, he's kind of realized that by speaking well and talking out of your ass about how to change the country and stoking the culture war, you can actually become quite popular, and it's just interesting to see because this guy's a venture capitalist. I think he went to Yale, wrote a great book that actually understood some serious issues in America. And now he has really bad views on Ukraine. He says, who cares about Ukraine? He's like, I don't care what happens in Ukraine. His alliance with Marjorie Taylor Greene is not great. And he's said a lot of racial dog whistles like about the southern border, immigrants in general. And he just, much like Kevin McCarthy in some ways, I think knows better, but enjoys the celebrity status, the access to power, and having a close relationship with the president. And so he beat Mandel and some of the other crazies in Ohio. And unfortunately, Trump endorsed J.D. Vance. I think that really helped him out. And so now Trump can again say, see, I control elections. Whoever I endorse becomes the nominee. And his record's actually pretty split on that, to be honest. It's not like he just walks on water and everything he touches turns to gold. But of course, this is going to fuel that energy. And I think it's going to put some of these races back because it would be good to see an anti-Trump Republican do well. But instead, we have the endorsed Trump ones who seem to be doing well. So it's too bad. And The Atlantic had a great line about J.D. Vance, and I wanted to just read it really quick. It said, long ago, before J.D. Vance started doing his best to sound like another MAGA candidate, he had an ear for a metaphor. Reflecting on how heroin and prescription opioids have ravaged his home state of Ohio, Vance worried that a certain Republican candidate for president would have a similar effect. He said in quotes here, Donald Trump is cultural heroin. He makes some people feel better for a bit, but he cannot fix what ails them, and one day they'll realize it. And he wrote that in The Atlantic in 2016. Vance also has discussed how Trump provided quick, simple solutions to complex issues, and it's just ironic now because he's part of this same simplest populist movement, and he's doing the same things Trump did. And it's too bad. Like, there's always part of me that puts out a little hope that, like, maybe he's just saying this stuff to get elected, and then he'll be rational once he gets into power. I wish, but I think we've seen from people like Kevin McCarthy that it doesn't matter. So I don't know anymore. I just really don't know anymore. And then I haven't talked much about Pennsylvania as well, but that race is quite a nightmare, and maybe I'll cover that next week. But it just worries me because it seems like the GOP, and some ways the Democratic Party as well, but mainly in the GOP, it's just about grifters now. It's just about people who can talk well without providing any solutions. And looks like 2022 is going to be more of that. The last thing I'll add before we get into the meat of the topics today is that the Fed has raised interest rates up 0.5%. I think it was the right thing to do. They probably should have done it a long time ago. It's a little too little, a little too late, but inflation's insane. I think it's about 8.5% right now, and the Fed needs to do something. And there's still debates over why inflation's happened, but I think you have the war in Russia, you have the COVID pandemic. You've had the United States put so much money into the economy with these different rounds of stimulus, etc. I think all of them have kind of built off of each other, but I wasn't alive, but I'm sure some of you remember that that's what Volcker, the Federal Reserve Chair, did, who worked for the Carter administration as well as the Reagan administration. That's what he did in the 80s to stop inflation after the pretty wild late 70s. Of course, they call it Volckering the economy now, is where you basically raise interest rates and it hoping to eventually save the economy, but in the process it also causes a recession. And I think it's fairly likely that that's what's going to happen in probably the coming year. Is, the Fed, since the 2008 recession, has been very hesitant to raise interest rates. Monetary policy has been pretty stagnant in regards to any changes like that. And I think we're going to see some form of a recession, because that seems to be kind of how they get out of these inflation spikes, is by almost triggering a recession. And so I think we might see employment drop. We might see drops in housing prices as well. Hopefully it won't be too long, but it's a really tough situation, and I won't even admit to know that much about it, but it's like, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, and that's part of the reason why Carter really struggled in his administration. And I hate to say it, but the Biden administration is looking more and more like the Jimmy Carter era. But I'll end at least that segment on all that. Lots of things happening in the United States right now, to be honest. But I just wanted to touch on those because it just doesn't seem like we have a very healthy political climate. And I know that's not the first time I have said that.